Hi, everybody. Good evening. So, yeah, this is Aviraj from Hack to Skill, and I'll be your host for this evening. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all for this problem statement explainer session for Scale 91 Hackathon, powered by Hack to Skill. So, before we dive into the heart of the event, let's set the stage and talk about a bit about the event. So, let me just share my screen real quick, and I'll walk you through what the event is all about. And based on that, we'll take it forward. So, yeah, as you might have also seen in the communications that was sent across, that uh, a couple of speakers, esteemed speakers, would be joining us in this particular panel. So yeah, that will come at a bit of a later stage for this particular session. But before that, let's dive into the hackathon and what it's all about. So just give me a moment. I'm sharing my screen. So yeah, I hope the screen is visible. So as you can see over here, the hackathon is entirely centric towards financial technology, that is fintech. So this hackathon essentially falls under the umbrella of FinTech Festival India, which is one of the largest fintech forums across the nation. And as simple as it sounds, real problems and real solutions. That's the mantra for Scale 91 Hackathon. So we're actually looking forward to getting some good solutions by the end of this particular hackathon. And as you can see, there's a lot of information which you can go through and which will help you get more clarity on what the hackathon is all about. And these are the challenges: real-time market insights, blockchain and cryptocurrency innovations, algorithmic trading strategies, instant card issuance, and AI-enhanced threat detection. So these are the five challenges or problem statements we'll be deep diving into later in this particular call. And as you can see, Vipul Saini, Prabhu Elangovan from HDFC Bank and Protein, respectively, they're the mentors, and Prasanna Lohar, Sharath, Monica, and they are the respective jury for this particular hackathon. So we can have a look at what the esteemed panel we have. And just giving you a brief rundown of the schedule we have. So this hackathon was launched on December 15th, and the idea submission was open a few days after. And now we are having this particular session, the problem statement explainer, to set the context and about what the hackathon is all about and what exactly are the expectations moving forward. And a couple of weeks later, we'll also be organizing an AMA session, just so we make sure that you have your ideas in place, and you basically have whatever you need, the all the gunpowder you need to actually get some good ideas and formulate some excellent solutions. So that's one thing. Besides this, this is the brief rundown of the. We'll be closing the the idea submissions on 28th. So post which we'll be having a proper mentor-mentee connect and an extensive round of prototyping development, along with the mentorship, which obviously we'll be informing you about. And after that, after various rounds of checkpoints and various shortlisting parameters, the top 10 to 15 teams would be announced on Monday, that is February 26th. And one of the biggest perks of this hackathon is that, as I mentioned about the FinTech Festival India, right, which is one of the biggest FinTech forums, you'll be directly called at that particular venue in Delhi, that is in Yashobhumi, and you'll be pitching in front of thousands of delegates. So that is going to be one of the major highlights of this particular hackathon. And just imagine the kind of exposure you'll get. And besides the impressive cash pool that we have, that is 5 lakh rupees, we also have the opportunity for you guys to get your ideas incubated, maybe some internship and job opportunities as well down the line. So, but that is obviously not sure, but there might be a chance for that. Besides that, as I mentioned about the FinTech Festival India, right? So in that particular conference, when you'll be called upon and invited over there, just imagine that you'll be able to network and collaborate with the best in the business, and such a good exposure would be absolutely at your disposal. So yeah, that's another thing. So, besides this, let's now deep dive into the agenda, the proper agenda of this particular call. So, as you as mentioned, this is the problem statement explainer session, right? And in this session, we'll be just addressing we'll be explaining the problem statements, picking them up one by one and explaining it to you, setting the context of what the expectations are from all the participants in terms of the problem statements, and what are the kind of solutions that you need to come up with, maybe some tips and tricks over there. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? And I'd like to now welcome our esteemed panelists for today, Mr. Sharat Chandra and Ms. Monica D'Souza. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Sharat Chandra. So, Sharath, as you can see, he's the co-founder of India Blockchain Forum. He's a seasoned blockchain and emerging tech evangelist, esteemed educator, and startup enabler. So, with a profound experience and understanding of blockchain's potential, he empowers organizations for growth. Sharath also actively supports startups, offering them strategic guidance and mentorship for success. And as a startup enabler, he also provides expert growth and strategy advice for shaping impactful startup and corporate engagement. So, Sharath, it's a pleasure to have you in this particular session. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Abhiraj. Great to be here.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Monica D'Souza. So she is a renowned fintech product and strategy consultant. So with over 2 decades of global experience, Monica has successfully led innovative software projects within financial services sector as a digital business executive and specializing in digital payments and consumer products. Her commitment towards continuous learning propels growth and disruption as well. And as an accomplished product leader as well, she has overseen international and strategic initiatives, demonstrating expertise in design development and go to market initiatives. So, yeah, Monica, it's a pleasure to have you as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, before we deep dive into the problem statements and pick up one of them at a time. So any particular opening thoughts and opening note you'd like to add on Sharath and Monica, and any opening thoughts and what are you looking forward to in this particular initiatives?
Yeah, pretty excited about this hackathon, and some of the problem statements are very much in tune with the current times, the current challenges which the industry faces. So look forward to discussing them with the participants, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. Anything from your end?
Echo Sharat's thoughts. Really looking forward to what we are going to uncover in the hackathon and what new things we are going to see. I think the problem statements are very, very basic. At the same time, they have so much more opportunity and hidden revenue potential. So I'm actually
Right.
looking forward to judging them when these are presented to us.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, thank you for that opening. Now I think we've set the perfect stage, and this is the problem statement number one. So it's about real-time market insights, unleash AI algorithms that decode complex financial data in real time, empowering fintech companies and investors with precise market insights and protection. So, Sharath, Monica, I'd like to hand the stage over to you from now on, moving forward, because it'd be great if you could add something and say something about these particular problem statements one by one. Maybe give some tips to all the participants and how they can particularly envision the solution and how they need to go about it. So, yeah, over to you.
Monica, would you
Sharath,
like
you
to
will
go
take
first?
this one. Sure, happy to do that for this one. So, as far as this problem statement is concerned, I think we've all been seeing what is happening right now. Every time that a big event happens or even a tweet goes viral, we expect the markets to react, and that does actually happen. And we've seen a few instances just this last week. Now, the question is, when we think about the markets, we're not thinking about crystal balls where we suddenly come up with answers and we are able to predict the future based on what we are seeing, based on the social media and other platforms that things go viral. Essentially, for a business solution to do well, what we're looking at is real time market forecasts, which have laser sharp accuracy. But this is not something that hasn't existed before. We are not looking for run of the mill solutions whereby we are able to aggregate and therefore present data in a better manner. What I would be expecting to be solved for is how do you figure out with AI and any other technical data science related new innovation that you could use to actually swim in this very dark ocean, analyze what is going on both beneath the surface as well as what we are seeing on the outside, including black swan events and others that can be predicted, to really figure out that based on the market sentiment, where is the market headed? Based on what we are seeing on the outside and the inside, what can we expect? The other thing here is that we are not just expecting for you to solve this for consumers. Now, there are two aspects, or at least two layers that I can think about. One is that the part of the population which actually has the money is not as digitally equipped. We've seen that in the US, where massive amounts of wealth is actually held by people who are above 50 years. Now, the same stage would happen for India and for much of Asia, where the wealthier population happens to be the people who will be stopping work sometime in their 50s, which actually means that they have money to invest. So for that population which is not that digitally savvy, at the same time they're happy to spend money if they get the right insights. The question is, do we decode this enigma for them, which is where to invest, how can you crack the code on these correlations of what you find happening on the outside, which is market buzz, sentiment analysis, and what is happening on the insights, which is what is the data telling me. That's one. And the second would definitely be about fraud and other things that happen, at least with regards to stock trading and others. What can we do to be able to detect these bad actors in the system faster so that not only consumers but businesses can be protected from this massive loss through wise interventions that can be made possible through AI? So that is how I see this problem statement. Sharad, over to you.
Sure. So I would like to give another dimension to what Monica has been saying. So recently, even SEBI floated a circular on short selling. Now, short selling came into news for all the wrong reasons because there's another episode which spooked the markets, right? So the SEBI circular mandates brokers to collate real-time data on a script-wise basis and short sell positions and upload that on the stock exchange. So this is where a lot of technology is needed, right? And how do you collate the right information so that there's a lot of transparency even in the short selling process, because now short selling has been legitimized to a great extent by SEBI itself. So that is another area. Second is now AI has been weaponized for all the wrong reasons. I'll give you one example where there was a blast image of Pentagon which spooked the markets. So how do you detect those events? How do you detect deep fakes? And also build that into the model which you're designing for the market insights, right? Because if you do not factor in those outliers, your models will not be, I would say, foolproof. And how do you also balance ethics and profitability? Because there are also risks of front running, right? So I think these are some of the real issues which the market participants face. And if some of the participants can solve on that, that would be awesome.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for that those insights, Monica and Sharath. Though I believe the participants would have got a good understanding of what are the expectations from this particular problem statement. So yeah, now we'll move on to the next one. So this problem statement directly falls under Sharath, your area of expertise. So it's on blockchain and cryptocurrency innovation. So dive into the synergy of AI and blockchain, crafting solutions that foster security, cryptocurrency transactions, and enhance DeFi platforms and open new vistas of innovation. So, Sharath,
Yeah.
what
So
your take on
as we all have been witnessing, there's a lot of regulatory squeeze, if I can use the term, on the industry, where regulators across the globe are harping upon stricter compliances. So now coming back to the Indian context, where the Financial Intelligence Unit (FIU) under the Ministry of Finance, they have said that you need to have a transaction monitoring system if you're dealing in virtual asset business. Now we do not have I would say, economical or easy to use transaction monitoring systems, even if you're launching a token, even if you're building anything on DeFi platform. So how do you build a transaction monitoring system which also flags suspicious transactions to the FIU, the financial intelligence units? Because the new circular states that if you're into this business, even if you're holding, trading, or even facilitating the trade of digital assets, you should be registered with the financial intelligence unit. And one of the mandatory provisions is that you should have a transaction monitoring system and a flagging mechanism for suspicious transactions. So that is one. Second is with the implementation of the data protection bill, there's a wider emphasis on having a consent manager, because people like you and me are called data principals in the bill, and how you and I as data principals will be allowed to provide consent to the right data fiduciary, something like a e-commerce player or a big tech player. So how the consent management will happen. Second is now the bill requires that these data processors to have an itemized consent. If I'm using your data, I should be explicitly stating I'm using your data for, let's say, so and so purposes. The consent manager should also enable the right to be forgotten, erasure, storage, and so on and so forth. And we do not have, I would say again, economical off-the-shelf solutions. So that's very much needed. So I think these are the two areas, especially in the blockchain space, which I'm really keen to explore and discuss with the participants.
Right, very rightly said, and thank you for that particular note. Monica, anything you'd like to add on to what Sharath has said about this?
I think only one thing that while some of the banks have shown a lot of innovation by adopting blockchain technology, most of
Mhm.
these have been, I would say, PR ready statements that have been made. I haven't really seen the application, and this is where I think fintechs can actually further the
Right.
demand that is there, but also be able to create the proof points that can make it easier for the banks to adopt it, not just as a pilot but something that can actually solve a problem. And because we are seeing that actual problems and monetization becomes the core statement and focus for fintechs all across the world, I think it's very, very critical for all of us to think about what in blockchain has still not been leveraged by Indian banks and where can it happen. It may not be in the sexy consumer side, it may be on the back end, but I still feel that there's a lot that needs to be explored. And second, I
Right.
know Sharath has mentioned about data and privacy, so I won't venture there. But I think cross-border payments still has a lot of blockchain innovation, and I know Sharath has spoken about this in a lot of the articles that have been written last month as well as previously. I think we should definitely be looking at this area in terms of how maybe not crypto, but at least blockchain can solve some of the basic problems that we have with regards to cost, transparency, AML risks, and cross-border regulations.
Right. Understood. Yeah. So thank you, Monica, for that particular note. And listening to both of you about these two particular problem statements, there's one thing that I just thought about, that even though these problem statements are kind of restricted to a particular domain, there is still a lot of innovation and a lot of exploration that the participants can do in terms of what innovation they can bring on the table. So that's something that is on the table for this particular hackathon. So yeah. Moving on to the next problem statement, we have algorithmic trading strategies. So this is about master AI powered algorithmic trading, craft strategies that navigate market trends, optimizing portfolios for maximum returns and minimal risks. So Sharath, Monica, over to you for this particular one.
So I would like to build upon my previous comment on algorithms, right, where there's a lot of there's a need to ensure that we have the right models in terms of transparency, and these models are devoid of any bias. And
Right.
also how we also have to factor in that these models should not pose any systemic risk, so that you do not end up tanking the market, right? If everyone takes a bet against certain event, then it should not lead to systemic risk as far as markets are concerned. Second is the front running part, right? How do you ensure that you are also tackling that? Because it can give unfair advantage to some of the investors. And lastly, how do you balance both ethics and profitability? When I say ethics, how do you ensure uh, free from any bias, and how do you ensure that market participants and investors also stand to profit by using these algorithmic trading solutions?
Right.
Monica, over to
Only on this one, though, I have to admit that I'm more thinking about this more from a consumer standpoint. As somebody who's not an active trader or investor, two things that come to mind is how can we prevent fraud from happening, which again is something I've said earlier, which is to protect the money of the consumers which is at play, because when companies go down, consumers lose money. It's those people who actually lose money most. And secondly, trust gets lost. And the second is because there are algorithmic trading strategies that we are discussing, it will hopefully weed out the bad actors in the system, which are influencers and the others who are creating the hoopla around it. Litigations can happen, laws can exist, which Sharat has spoken about. But the question is, how do these get implemented? And does there need to be a regulation for these trading strategies once put in can actually help both the traders in an ethical way, or at the same time maybe the regulator also can have certain insights, or at least have a purview of what is going on inside the system, because again they are looking at it more from the perspective of protecting consumers and businesses, but they may not know the insights of the technology which is empowering. So how do we create that bridge between those is also something I would be actively thinking about.
Right.
Right. Makes
And
sense.
one more point to add. So recently, even the asset under management for mutual fund reached 50 crores, right? Now, but that still represents a very tiny portion of the entire investment potential which India as a country has. So how do we onboard the next, let's say, billion users into this particular market, and how do we enable people who are not so savvy, as Monica was rightly pointed out in the beginning, that how do you can devise algorithmic strategies for people who are new to the market, so that they can also test the market and then eventually start getting into the space. So that can also, how do you enable non-native investors to come and test this market out?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Sharath, and thank you, Monica, for that particular one. So I think that would have solved the queries around this particular problem statement. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. So the next one, yeah, as we discussed, it falls under Monica and that your particular expertise. So yeah, it's about credit card instant card issuance. So redefining convenience with instant virtual card issuance upon approval. Experience the freedom to transact while waiting for your physical card. So Monica, your thoughts on that, please?
So I think thanks to Aadhaar as well as eKYC, India is already on a roll, and we are able to roll out the RuPay credit cards for UPI in less than like a couple of seconds. While I feel that that is actually only scratching the surface, because as far as India's hunger is concerned, India happens to be one of the most underpenetrated markets in terms of credit still, and that will continue for a long time. I don't think that this problem will get solved by traditional banking layers only, and them doing the work that it takes to be able to first of all be able to identify credit worthy customers and then be able to serve such a large population. Secondly, as consumer preferences are changing and the versus Bharat divide is getting bigger, I think we need to think about smaller niche use cases which are getting solved by credit cards, but not in the physical plastic form. So, two things to think about here. For innovators, you have to think about where and how this card issuance can happen. It's not just about the back end, but it's also about the front end. So, if I were to explain and elaborate this a little bit, design really matters. We've seen a lot of card interface design companies start doing well simply because they offer an innovative design, while under the hood there's nothing which is extremely special or innovative. Now the question is, if you had a user friendly platform that does this, it would come with a bank. So what can fintechs do to be able to bridge this puzzle and create this tech interface? Because more and more merchants will want to actually have loyalty as well as card solutions for their customers and to hyper personalize these offerings, and they don't have that vehicle available right now. Everything that we see in the market is focused on consumers, which is coming from fintechs banks or fintechs plus banks. But what happens to poor merchants who are actually trying to increase the footfall, whether it is a physical store or actually increase the number of customers, which is the top of the funnel when it comes to online? I think that's a big thing that we have to solve for. Secondly, I think banks as well as card networks are looking for where do they get the next set of consumers from. So it's also about being able to treat these mobile first customers who've never seen a physical card other than what they call in India an ATM card, which is actually a debit card, and try to see them progress along the journey without a physical card instrument. And third for me is, how do we make this safe and secure? I think Sharat and I have spoken enough, but we keep talking about both ethics as well as trust and faith in the system. Fraud is on the rise. Customers do need to have the ability to be able to feel safe with plastic, non-plastic phones, non-phones, or any other form factor. Now, how do you actually do that, and what safeguards you're able to build in so that this card issuance is almost the same and as easy as card de-issuance? This is on the front end. Now, when I talk about the back end, again, banks are monolithic and they're moving towards a banking architecture which is more API based. Banks are more than happy to expose these interfaces, but the question remains that the architecture as it exists today still has a space and opportunity for a lot of providers at the back end to be able to support this card issuance in every day and in an instant. Same goes for tokenization. Again, Sharath is an expert, so I know he will be speaking about this. But it's very important for card credentials to not be exposed to fraudsters, hacking, and phishing attempts. And how do we prevent that? So I think those would be my points, and I'll hand over to Sharath for the remaining.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with Monica, and I think she has covered the entire bit. Only thing is, I would still harp upon the card tokenization part, right? And how do you ensure that even people who are not so savvy, right, first time users of digital payments, how do you enable them? How do you make them understand that the security is taken care of? And how do you make the UX easier for them?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Sharath, for that detailed explanation. So yeah, I think that essentially, as we've discussed four problem statements now, this is where this remains at the forefront of every single one of them. That no matter whatever the technologies and whatever route we go through, the entire information and the entire thing needs to be absolutely secure, and we need to make sure that whatever the domain we might fall into, they need to actually we need to prevent any kind of fraud, or we need to remain very aware of that. So yeah, moving on to the next problem statement, which is eventually the final one. This is about AI enhanced threat detection. So that, and this again falls into our particular topic that we were just having a conversation on. So securing a digital realm with AI driven threat detection, staying one step ahead of cyber threats and safeguarding your digital assets. So yeah, over to Sharad and Monica for your thoughts on this, please.
So as I stated earlier, I mean, AI has been weaponized. So you have now deep fakes have become the biggest nightmare of financial institutions, right? Because people can fake or maybe try and impersonate someone else, and also lead to fraud. Now, even there are instances of voice cloning, right? And related frauds as well. So how do you use AI as a counter tool to detect those deep fakes? How do you use AI to detect synthetic content or synthetic imagery, right? And how you can maybe combine both blockchain and AI, because there's some startups in Europe which are doing it,
Right.
where the provenance of the image or the metadata can be stored in the blockchain, and so that you can ensure that okay, this particular image really belongs to so and so entity or so and so person. So deepfakes is another one. Voice cloning, synthetic data, and again synthetic ID and fraud are some of the areas where financial institutions are still grappling with. And how do you enable more fraud detection solutions
Yeah.
which financial institutions can use and apply? That can
Okay.
be most of the KYC piece, because that's the biggest bone of contention as of now.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, Monica, any thoughts from your end on that particular front?
So for me, I'm going to speak a little bit from the financial services perspective, specifically real-time payments, which have seen this massive explosion. We are probably going to hit 1 billion in UPI transactions every day, hopefully by in the next 1 to 2 years. So question is, when we talk about AI and threat detection, there's a lot that exists with traditional forms of payment factors, but not with these new innovations that are happening. Now, it's important to understand that network traffic, etc., is still being developed and is work in progress as we're speaking. So when we talk about AI, we have to look at not just the past data, but we almost have to become like AI experts to be, or like detectives to be able to understand what can happen later. Also, the other question is, as we are becoming more and more open and bilateral and other linkages start happening with other countries, we also expose ourselves to our entire network coming under attack. Now this becomes now digital for us does not just mean an ability to pay and therefore convenience. It's also about national security. So for us, these bad actors in the system will go beyond just consumer businesses, etc., but it's also at the network level. And what kind of threats can we encounter? What can we do to be able to guard not just the infrastructure, the consumers, the businesses, but also the country? The other thing is we also need to somehow feel and anticipate what these cyber criminals are able to do and how they are outsmarting us at our game. So Sharad spoke about voice. Now this is something new, but question is this kind of application, whether it is in customer service, whether it is in terms of phone calls, whether it is even in terms of voice payments, is huge. So the implications are huge, and we are yet to even think of how to protect ourselves, first as consumers, which means using our mind, and then actually in terms of businesses. So I feel that the use cases are numerous. Question is, how do we solve for them?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much, Sharad and Monica, for covering all the problem statements, not only this one. Yeah, so I think many participants have joined this particular call. So now we have covered all, now that we've covered all the problem statements, so I think we can open the house for the Q&A and address the questions that will come up on the YouTube live chat. So yeah, let me just pull up the first question. Yeah. So the first question is from Sanchit. Can you provide examples of scenarios where instant and virtual card issuance brings significant convenience to users?
Sorry,
Monica,
can you
Sharad?
repeat the question, Aviraj? Can you provide specific? Okay.
Scenarios where instant virtual card issuance. Yeah, please.
Okay, Sanchit, my question would be, I am wondering whether you have used the UPI Rupee CC, uh, and you can actually pay with it. You can get the card in less than like probably a couple of seconds. You can actually instantly, some of the applications, which are the TP apps, like Google Pay, Phone Pay, are able to detect it. So you can actually add the card with your mobile number and automatically it gets added. So in terms of issuance, it's automatic. In terms of usage, it's even better because you don't need to enter your card number, you don't need to do anything, and suddenly on all your apps which are enabled for UPI, which exist on your phone, you have an automatic card that's available. Another great instance of this is without naming, but there are enough food tech providers who actually instantly issue you a card. If you're able to get that card, you get an instant discount on the order that you're placing, and the card gets used for that payment. So what happens is, not only do you get the discount, which is typically cashback, but what is more important is that you can get the card issued and used for that same transaction. So this is just one of the examples. There are many and plenty of them. Some of these, by the way, have also been massive failures. So when I'm talking about customer convenience, you might think that this is the only thing that a virtual card issuance offers. It's actually much, much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for taking that up, Monica. So yeah, the next question is from Techno Eviction. In the context of AI enhanced threat detection, what steps can participants take to minimize false positives and negatives? Sharat, Monica, your thoughts on this one, please.
So especially in the case of deepfake, there are deepfake libraries by Google and Jigsaw. So you can also refer to that and then build on top of it. That can be one of the examples. And you already, I think financial institutions do prescribe a list of bad actors, right? For example, let's say in the US, you have a OFAC sanctions list, right? So some of the lists can be referred to, and so that you can be sure that you are referring to the right set of people who are not supposed to be on your list, and then work on top of that.
So, yeah. Monica, anything from your end, or shall we move on to the next question?
So I think apart from the list, there is also one more thing that we can think about, which is probably as an ecosystem, think or propose a coalition of these kind of lists that need to be maintained, but by different actors. So I know on the card network side, we maintain one, governments maintain them, and there are enough FATCA and other compliances that you need to operate with in terms of banking. I think what one must allude to, because as digital gets more pervasive and not just in payments, but across, is there a need for us to be able to think about these coalitions sharing data between each other or sharing such kind of lists? And then what can AI do to be able to enhance this use case better?
And adding on to Monica's point, so recently even there's a discourse or debate about having a whitelist of loan apps, right? So I think those initiatives in it can also be looked at, so that if there's a whitelist, you also factor that into your system or into your model, so that you don't encounter any false negative there.
Yeah, thank you for taking up that one. I think that answers the question. So yeah, we have the next one on the screen. Lakshmi Tej Machikanti. So on which market trends should we make the portfolio long-term market or intraday markets? Yeah, Sharath, Monica, your thoughts on this one?
I'm unable to get the point of this particular question. So it should be individual call, right? I mean, whether he's looking at creating a model from a long-term portfolio building or just a short selling or intraday trading. So I mean, individually, the participants call, I would say. But again, they are participants in both the spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next question is, how can participants address potential challenges related to identity verification and approval processes in instant card issuance?
So, Rupashri, as far as identity verification is concerned, it will differ by geography. At least in India, we already have eKYC, which has been accepted by the RBI as a possible way to be able to do this. In terms of approval process itself, that is managed directly by the banking institution, which is loaning its BIN or is using its BIN to actually issue a card. So, as far as the approval process is concerned, there can be a oversight that you can have of the banking processes, but each bank will be different, and the approval processes typically will take into account a number of parameters that need to be worked out directly with the bank in conjunction with them, as so that that can be provided when the user is being issued or is being asked for their user information, which can be fetched either through a public/private database or by asking for that user information before it gets passed on to the bank for actually processing. But this needs to be on a per bank basis. Anything which is pan bank is always going to be something which is only as per regulation. For example, certain fields as per regulation have to be provided. For example, pan, your name, your age, your educational background, this is as per RBI, so those would be standard across bank. But the specific parameters used by banks to issue or to decline a card application is bank specific.
Okay, thank you for taking that up, Monica. Sharad, anything? I think we already have the next question. So yeah, this is from Rashri. What key considerations should participants keep in mind when developing AI-powered algorithmic trading strategies?
Yeah, so I think two key points: ethics and ensuring the model is free from bias. So that will be two key aspects, because even now the government is also looking at something called AI sandbox, where all the models will be put through that, as per media reports. So it's mandatory, or it's important that all the models do factor in ethics and free from bias.
Monica, anything from your end for this particular question? Okay, yeah. I think we can move on to the next one. So this is from Harsh. Are there any specific security measures that should be prioritized when implementing instant card issuance to safeguard user transactions? I believe we have a lot of questions about card issuance in this particular session. Yeah, Monica, over to you.
They when implementing instance specific security measures, I don't know what you mean by specific. The security measures that you have to take into place in any kind of fintech or any other innovative use case solving is as per law. So you have to understand the RBI regulation around this. As long as that has been accounted for either in terms of spirit or in terms of actual implementation, you're good. Now, additional security that you have or you might want to implement is something that needs to be worked out directly with the bank that is actually supporting this at the back end.
Yeah,
Can I
So
make
always
one point?
yeah,
Yeah.
please.
go
I
ahead.
mean, one additional security measure I can think of is putting a limit to the number of payments, or the quantum of payment. Like, say, you can put a cap of, let's say, 2,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees. Right? Something of that sort will ensure that you do not, no, but no fraudster can actually hack into your account and get more than what is needed, right? And the reason it makes sense is because now even for all transactions beyond 2,000, now within 4 hours you can write back and get those transactions reversed, right? So I think, let's say, 2,000 will be an ideal limit. That's what I can say. But depends entirely upon the use case and depends entirely upon the bank.
Thank you for your thoughts on this one, Sharath and Monica. So yeah, the next question is from Sachi Sabhya. What opportunities do you see for the participants to pioneer new vistas of innovation in the intersection of AI and blockchain within the fintech landscape?
Right. So if you look at all the language models, right, so they're not knowledge bases, right? They're probabilistic models of knowledge bases. And that's where there's a significant push on having a sovereign large language model, a large language model which is in tune with Indian sensibilities or Indian data. And there's a saying that garbage in, garbage out. So how do you ensure the right data gets into those models? I think that's where the interplay of AI and blockchain is there, where you sanitize the data first and also ensure that that data is not being tampered with when you're building those models. For example, let's say there's one. In fact, Ola's founders model is called Kritim AI, so built entirely upon Indian data. Similarly, there are a few agri-tech startups which are building agri-tech specific large language models for India. Bhashan is another great example. So how do you use data specific to Indian context and Indian sensibilities and ensure that data is not tampered with when you're building those models?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Sharath, for taking that up. Monica, any thoughts from your end on this one? Okay, yeah. I think we can move on to the next one. So, yeah, again, Sanchit has come back. So, what role does real time communication play in the approval and issuance process of virtual cards, and how can participants optimize this aspect?
Okay, I don't know what communication play, what Sanchit means by communication, but it all needs to happen in real time. So essentially, the processes that have to be set up with a bank have to ensure that this is happening in near real time, if not real time, which means that the communication between the fintech player and the underlying technology platform has to ensure that the response, whether an approval or a reject, happens in real time. So you already see examples of this. For example, Amazon card issuance, which is supposed to be real time, but in certain cases it says that the result will come back after a few days, depending on whether you're carded with the banking provider behind Amazon, right? So those are some of the things that you have to consider. Secondly, you don't need to optimize on this aspect. You can actually build on it, because optimization would mean that you're playing around with certain features of how you either select or deselect users approval and other processes. Pre-selection of certain users is very much possible, which means that the answer will come in real time. Now again, these are strategies that are already put into place, but they have to be worked out with the banks. Certain banks are also, the merchant can also provide pre-selected users who they feel are great users on the platform, and they should be provided credit. So those are again some things that really depend on the contractual obligations that have been worked out when the fintech slash merchant slash ecosystem provider slash digital player works with the banks.
Understood. Yeah, thank you, Monica, for taking that up. So I think, yeah, the next question is from Akash. In terms of risk management, what methodologies or approaches should participants adopt when designing their trading strategies? Yeah, Monica, Sharath, thoughts on this one?
I mean, keeping investor protection at the heart of the design or the solution, you can think of something, I mean, something very traditional or very already in use, something like a stop loss management, right? I think some of those can be, and again, avoiding referring to complex products like derivatives, which are not uh, relevant for, let's say, retail users. I mean, they're meant for institutional users. Right? So staying away from options or derivatives, which are meant for more mature investors, I think that can be some of the risk management tools which can be thought of, especially when designing for early stage investors or investors who are new to the market.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that one. I think that answers the question, Akash. Yes. So the next question is from Tanushri Bose. How can participants leverage AI algorithms to decode complex financial data in real time? Sharath, Monica, your thoughts on this one, please.
So one way would be you look at open source models, right, and build on top of that, because we already have predictive rule based models in place, right? But now there's a wider shift towards open source model. That's why there's a lot of work by Meta and others in popularizing those models. So open source models would really help.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sharath. Next question is from Dhruvan Singh. Other than deepfakes and KYC, what else can we think of in AI threat detection? So, any particular examples from your end?
Especially on the fraud, because most of the frauds, they will follow a pattern, right? Let's say phishing attempts, right? Phishing attempts, or passwords, or credential thefts. There's certain ways, for example, social engineering used to steal those passwords. There's already a method to that madness. So AI can already use those data sets and actually built in systems which can flag those transactions.
Okay, yeah. Monica, anything from your end? Yeah. Let's switch to
I
the
think
next
with
one.
AI threat detection, right? I think deep fix and KYC is probably again just scratching the surface. Dhruva, like Sharath has said, there are others, plenty of those which are already in operation. But think about this in terms of the actors and what types of actors. When you're thinking about deepfakes and KYC, I think we're thinking more from the consumer lens. Think about it from the business lens. Think about it from countries, because as countries, sovereign data is residing locally, and more countries are enabling that. What can be a threat in terms of to a particular country or to a particular network or to a particular system? I think that's when you will be able to look at this slightly from the perspective of what you need to innovate for. And if we gave the answers, then I don't think we'll be able to see the innovations which come in from the and concepts that you produce. So maybe we have to wait to give that answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that particular thing. So, yeah, the next question we can have on the screen, it's again from Harsh. Can you share insights into the potential future advancements in credit card issuance and how participants can stay innovative in this particular space? Yes. Uh, Monica,
So,
your
a
thoughts?
couple of things that I can definitely think about is, for example, choosing your card network. And though I don't think that that will happen anytime, but since the RBI has come up already with a draft associated with this, I think it begs the question as to whether customers will be able to personalize the offering, almost hyper personalize it to whatever they want. Now, setting limits, what you can use it for, how much amount you can use it for, is something that the banks even offer today. But imagine getting a card that you can only use the way you want it, and your pattern would be very different. So, for example, I get a card which is the same, but Sharad uses it differently and I use it differently. So, the variant of the card is very different. Now, for example, choosing the kind of rewards that you want. Now, I don't play golf, so I don't need a premium card which actually offers me golf. You know what I'm saying? So, those are certainly on the consumer side. But I actually, if you think about it and go under the hood again, the question is what can I personalize it from, say, a merchant point of view? Today we have large ecosystems which issue cards. Imagine if a coalition came together of your kirana stores and they offered you a card whereby you could have a limit that you could only spend on a particular type or category of product, or within a particular location. Or for example, you could offer a virtual card, and this is also, by the way, being done to your children or to your senior citizen parents or to a particular type, for example. And this is being done in another country. You can offer a card to your driver slash helper only for their spends on a particular type, which is fuel. And this actually enables two things: number one, spend, and then being able to monitor. Now, what I'm talking about are not fringe use cases. These are cases that are already happening, but the innovators in the market are going to be those who are able to do this at scale, and therefore create monetization opportunities for the ecosystem, not just for themselves and not VC funded. And so that is where I think the innovator dilemma comes in, which is what can you do at such scale, which can and technology is at the heart of it, right?
Right. Yeah, thank you for that one, Monica. Sharath, anything from your end on
Yeah,
this one?
especially on the part about family cards. For example, my daughter uses a card especially for her uh, shopping, especially for, let's say, painting, drawing, and school-related stuff, right? And this is picking up momentum, especially in cities like Bangalore, even tier two cities where cash is becoming not the preferred mode of transaction. Where, but how do you give your own card? You can't do that, right? But we can have a separate family card for your kids and other relatives who can use that. So that's another example. But how do you personalize that and also build on top of those models? How do you maybe offer another product once that child reaches a certain stage, right? So that can be also thought about. In building maybe or building financial literacy component, that can be another great example.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharath and Monica, for taking up that one. Yeah, so next question is again from Dhruv. In AI threat detection, what do you think about money laundering and abnormal customer transactions? what innovations do you expect from that particular standpoint?
Right, right. So I think, for example, let's say if you look at, let's say, cross-border payments or even remittances, right? So there's already a limit by RBI, $250,000, right? So some high-value suspicious transactions can already be flagged, right, using AI. There's somebody is already doing a normal transaction, but you see a high-value transaction on one particular account. So AI models can be built to flag those transactions and alert the system so that transactions do not get complete or get reversed. So that can be one. And money laundering especially comes into play if you look at digital asset transactions, where most of the actors are using it as a tool to avoid taxes and avoid the existing Foreign Exchange Management Act regulations. So AI can be a very good enabler in detecting those transactions.
Right. Yeah. Monica, anything from your end?
I think the tax authorities have already started using AI. So that is why a lot of taxpayers got notices which were automated. So I think that is already in place. So when we think about money laundering, I think being able to, and more countries will start, uh, I think they'll start cooperating in terms of how transactions are happening, especially cross border, which Sharath already touched upon. As far as abnormal customer transactions are concerned, I have to admit that I think the banking and banks and networks have done a great job already. So whenever there is an abnormal transaction, I'm sure many of us, at least in India, are very happy to receive a call which says, "Are you trying to do a transaction?" Which doesn't happen abroad because of RBI regulations, etc. I think the other thing that we have to, again, I'll have to go back on my RTP point, which is real time payments. As more types of payment transactions start, including voice payments, the bigger question becomes, how do we face the threat of bad actors, whether it is voice cloning, whether it is even friendly fraud that happens, and nobody has been able to solve that. But just like UPI has put in a limit of a certain transaction amount and a hold being there, can AI be able to detect that that is happening and therefore put a stop to allow the hold to be released at a later point, which happens at certain levels? It can even happen at a phone level, for example. Similarly, when phones are stolen, there's a lot of instances of that. What kind of technology that can we think about in terms of AI, which actually manages to look at our hand patterns and says, this is a stolen phone, you can't use it? So the type of transactions that we're speaking about, again, need to go a little bit beyond the realm of, including for all of us like me who thinks about only financial services, to all kind of digital points and as well as moments of truth that a user has during the day in terms of their interaction and digital footprint. And every such point then becomes a case point and an event which can be looked at in terms of AI threats. Sorry, AI solving for threats.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Monica and Sharath. I think we can take up the last two questions and then we'll wrap up the session. So, yeah, the next question is from Yash. Ma'am, in the first problem statement, real time market insight, what fields should we consider to generate market insight?
Yeah, I didn't get the question. First problem statement, what all fees should we consider to generate the market insight?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we be answering the problem itself, the solution of the problem? I think that's what you're supposed to do, Yash.
Let me try to, maybe Monica, I mean, with your
Please.
permission, if I can just share. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say if you're looking at any particular sector, right? So what are the sectoral regulations and how do they impact those particular sector? The current news, the current trends, geopolitical trends. So these are some very vague examples or insights which you can factor in. Second would be at a company level or organizational level. There's various ratios which you can think of, right? But mostly from a sectoral regulation standpoint, second geopolitical, because now that's also coming into play and driving market sentiments, right? And how do you factor in those when you're trying to build upon any market insight?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that one, Sharath. So, yeah, Aditi Kanpal, this question, are there any specific machine learning algorithms or AI models that are particularly effective for threat detection in the digital realm?
Right. So example for deepfake, there is already a library by Google and Jigsaw which you can refer, right? So similarly, there are various open source models which you can refer, but there are certain limitations to those models. So there's a lot of fine tuning which needs to happen on a case to case basis.
Understood. So, just wanted to have your permission, Sharath and Monica. Shall we take up a couple of more questions or shall we wrap up? I think we have 2 to 3 minutes in hand.
Maybe we can have
Sure,
one more
let's do
question
that.
and then we can
Yeah,
wrap up.
I
Yeah.
think one more question would be fine. So yeah, just let me pull that up. So that is again from Aditi. Can you share insights into the future landscape of AI-driven threat detection and how participants can stay ahead in this rapidly evolving field?
So I can say that a lot of synthetic data can will be used for companies for both good and bad reasons. For example, in marketing, there's a lot of synthetic data which is being used to even train new models. But the flip side or the bad part is that those models can be used to cause harm, right? So how do you stay ahead and ensure that even if you're building models using synthetic data, how are you ensuring transparency, fairness in those models? That can be one. And again, staying ahead of the cyber criminals is going to be a tough task, right? We'll always be playing catching up because they're also using the same tools to attack the system, right? But I think the way forward would be collaborating on open source models, not the proprietary models, because that's where the community comes together and work towards. And you get a, I would say, 360-degree picture of the entire problem. Deepfake library is another great example where Google has come forward and made that library open source so that companies or individuals can build on top of that.
Thank you for that, Sharath. Monica, anything from your end on this particular question?
Uh, I'm just going to echo what Sharath said, and something that I previously want to still build upon it, which is that I think threat detection has to be, whether it is AI detection, AI driven, or whether it is even pure data science driven, has to be on the fact that we are doing things differently. So AI, in terms of when we think about everything in the system, typically we are only thinking about a few digital systems and that's about it. But even in daily life, there are plenty of interventions that can be made because we have a device which moves with us, which is our phone. So you have to think about what you're baking in terms of how threats are detected, and then people are informed about that. And for consumers it can be a phone, but for businesses it can be forward detection, which actually helps them save money. So again, I don't know how to say this any differently, but depending on the type of actor, and therefore whether it is retail, it is wholesale, the the way we detect threats and the way we inform them is going to change very rapidly. That's one. Consumption of a threat and acting on it, it's going to be a different field altogether, because not the same person or therefore the same entity can actually prevent that threat, and there will be other players that will come up just to be able to manage this. And as far as staying ahead is concerned, I think just because it's a rapidly evolving field, understanding and being on top of the game is basically about just learning about what's happening, and therefore what the proof points that are being created, which is mostly in the news, would be something that you would have to do.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Monica and Sharath, for your time. So, with that, we come to the end of this particular problem statement explainer session. I'd again like to express my gratitude for you to spare your time and enlighten the participants with your vision and with your particular insights in your respective domains. So, yeah, absolutely thrilled by this particular session. And before we conclude, any particular words of motivation and anything that you're looking forward to in this particular hackathon?
Also think out of the box and try and see how we can use multiple technologies to solve the problem rather than using one particular problem statement for one technology.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm
Monica.
going to say that just
Yeah, sorry.
solve for a particular problem and think about a solution that actually solves a problem, not just because we're trying to do these very sexy and cool things, because I think those days are over where those innovations got a lot of funding. What we're really looking for is solving real problems, and as Sharatha said, if you can stitch together certain technologies being worked together to solve these problems, that would be even better, because none of these problem statements are actually so-called new that we haven't heard before, which is where I think innovation comes in, because how you solve the problem can actually make the difference.
Right.
Absolutely. And with that said, we come again to the conclusion of this particular session. So, thank you very much, Sharath and Monica, for sparing your time for this session. And to all those participants, thank you very much for joining this particular session. And if at all your query has remained unanswered, because we weren't able to cater to all the questions in this session, so please feel free to write to us at support@hacktoskill.com. So we'll be taking up those queries readily and getting those queries addressed. So yeah, with that, we'd like to call it off for today. So thank you for joining, everybody, and have a great evening. Thank you, Sharath, and thank you, Monica, once again.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye bye.